The reference for this lecture is Angus Deaton, 2010, Understanding the Mechanisms of Economic Development in the Journal of Economic Perspectives. Unlike the first two cases of savings and commodity prices, where Deaton tested the theory of empirical model to understand the mechanism, the puzzling food consumption behavior did not find satisfactory explanation. This is not falsification of theory, but lack of theory that explains the behavior. We know that poor eat less and they cannot afford to buy more. Undernourishment leads to growth disorders of being too short or too thin. Undernourished adults and children are susceptible to disease, face problems of learning and earning. As incomes increase, the poverty declines, people consume more calories and more protein and more fat. Average consumption of both India and United States show higher than required calories. Intuitively, we know that higher the income of the household, higher the per capita consumption. Starting with Engel in the 19th century, food consumption and food expenditure shares in the household budgets have been proxies for living standards. Engel's curve shows the relationship between income and the food expenditure. Higher the income, larger will be the food expenditure. It is a positive upward sloping curve. As a budget share, poor spend larger proportion of their income on food compared to the rich. Deaton points out that something as simple as this gets more complicated if we closely observe the food consumption behavior. Simon Kuznets observed in 1976 that both in poor and rich countries, the total expenditure goes up with household size, but the per capita expenditure falls with the household size. Hence, larger households with more members are worse off than the small households with fewer members. Instead of total expenditure, Deaton and Paxson measured food expenditure per capita of the households with same per capita income and found that the food expenditure per capita is lower for households for more members in both rich countries and a poor country. And the extent of per capita reduction is largest in food scarce low income country. The Engels curve was steep when income is on the y-axis and the calorie consumption is on the x-axis, showing that as income increases, calorie consumption does not go up proportionately. One of the explanations considered was possibility of adjustment of the household size or household income or some other food related factor to food scarcity. These aspects did not provide satisfactory answer. Another explanation offered was that the elasticity of food consumption to prices is high and the price reduction due to economies of scale is used to substitute other items for food and income effect is offset. This is yet to be substantiated with data. Logically, economies of scale occur in big households, making food cheaper, and that should help more consumption. But the opposite behavior intensifies the puzzle. The second food puzzle is about the falling calorie and protein consumption at the average level. This was investigated by Deaton and Dries. Despite high rates of growth of per capita income and high per capita consumer expenditure, the per capita calorie consumption in India has been falling for more than a quarter century. In India, calorie consumption was also used as poverty line. About 56% of rural population consumed less than 2,400 kilocalories per day, and 49% of the urban population consumed less than 2,100 kilocalories per day in 1973-74. If same cutoff is used in 2011-12, more than 80% of the population fall below the consumption level. From an average of 2,240 calories per person in 1983, the average calorie consumption in rural areas fell to 2,047 in 2004-5. In monetary terms, poverty fell in rural area from 56% to 25% using the same methodology. Poverty reduction in India was slow, but the distribution of income did not worsen to push more people below poverty line for them to eat less. Food prices have also been falling consistently in India till 2008 when they started rising. Low calorie consumption cannot be attributed to impoverishment as interpreted by some economists. It is because in the state of Kerala, where the per capita calorie consumption is the lowest, the nutritional outcome of both the adults and children are better. The reported cases of hunger and starvation were lower than before. Gain in nutritional indicators is poor in India. Chronic energy deficiency is high among women in India, and gain in intergenerational height is only 0.56 centimeters per decade for men and 0.18 centimeters per decade for women, whereas in China and Western Europe it is 1 centimeter per decade. Interestingly, in the Indian state of Kerala, the growth in adult heights are higher than that of China and Western Europe, and there are no gender differences. We find some of the possible explanations for the puzzle in the literature on calorie consumption. As was suggested by Professor C.H. Hanumantarao earlier, and Deaton also thinks that decline in hard physical work in agriculture and non-agriculture due to mechanization and due to machinery for road construction and building construction, reduction in the drudgery of carrying water over long distances may have reduced the calorie requirement for physical work. Calorie consumption was more than enough for physical work, but not enough to meet the nutritional improvements. If this explanation is proved to be true over time, rural wage increases in the real terms will result in increased calorie consumption. So far, there is no corroborative data to show that the physical work requirement of agriculture have substantially fallen. There is no evidence to show that a substantial percentage of people moved out of agriculture. According to World Gallup report, 80% of the rural Indians reported physical work and 41% complained about increased physical effort compared to 5 years earlier. There is also no evidence so far to say that the larger households, physical work is less than in smaller households, leading to low calories per capita. Infections such as diarrhea reduce available calories to the body. Safe piped drinking water supply may be contributing to the control of such diseases, and calorie loss may be less, so making people to eat less. There is no recorded evidence on this either. The mechanism at work for food consumption income relationship is not known with certainty, as empirical evidence is lacking. Research brings out puzzles rather than falsification of any hypothesis. This is a case where the observations need a theory to explain the facts. It is not a case of going from theory to empirical investigation like the other examples. There are several barriers to understand the mechanism. Development economics makes progress when theory, empirical work, and historical evidence are put together. Development economics needs dedicated researchers who can link them together. Models, instruments, and randomized trials can uncover mechanisms, but these tools have not been used innovatively so far. Added to this, the development economics, we face measurement problems. Growth statistics are routinely overestimated in countries such as China and India. Estimates from alternative sources such as national account statistics overestimate consumption, and survey data underestimate the consumption. International comparisons enhance measurement problems. Compilation of world development indicators depend upon the price indices built by International Comparison Program IPC, very few understand how they are built. The methodologies are not widely debated and they are infrequently updated. Their use sometimes gives inconsistent results. For example, the US to Indian per capita GDP is 1.6 times larger in Indian prices than it is in American prices. Commodities chosen for commodity basket for consumption purpose, though consumed in both the countries, create downward bias in the consumption of poor country if the quantities consumed by the poor country is small. Such problems can only be resolved if there is a deep knowledge of theory, history, and evidence.